and on YouTube. It's out on Fridays, so be sure to subscribe and check it out. To lead the conversation on stage, please welcome podcast host and Playbook co-author Dasha Burns in conversation with U.S. Senator Adam Schiff.
Gotta get this mic flag on here. Show off the branding. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you, Senator Adam Schiff, for being here as well. Are we good here? Yeah, good enough. Good enough, we'll make it work. It's so fun to host a podcast with an audience. Usually I'm either cooped up in my little home studio or somewhere in the streets of Washington.
So what was that website again?
They do such a good job of promotion. The Conversation, click subscribe, wherever you get your podcast. Senator Adam Schiff, thank you so much for joining the conversation live here in Sacramento.
Great to be with you.
California is actually my home state. I grew up in San Diego. My husband's from LA. We already had plenty of Los Angeles gossip backstage that we will not rehash here. But I do want to talk to you about both California and California's place in the big picture for the Democratic Party, because there's kind of a lot going on for Democrats right now. We in Washington have been watching very closely some of these primaries. You had progressive Abdul El-Sayed just beat establishment-backed Democrat in Michigan. Dozens of DSA-backed candidates are winning primaries across the country. Today is election day, and Wisconsin Democrats might nominate Democratic Socialist Francesca Hong for governor. Here in California, though, voters nominated the most establishment credentialed Democrat in a crowded governor's field. You'll hear from Javier Becerra in a moment here. San Francisco just handed its moderate mayor a clean sweep. Is this one Democratic Party right now? Like, what's going on, Senator?
It is one Democratic Party, and I think if we want to be in the majority, we're going to have to be a big tent party. I would much rather have that diversity in our party than have it outside the party. I don't think you can extrapolate too much from the results because they're all over the map. A mainstream
literally
moderate, mainstream moderate candidate just won in Hawaii. Others won in Iowa and New Jersey and Virginia, and then you had very progressive and DSA candidates win elsewhere. Very hard to generalize, except this. I think the common denominator is people are, for a very good reason, deeply dissatisfied with the status quo. And they're looking for candidates of middle, left, right, that were willing to challenge the status quo, that have bold ideas for how to move the country forward, for addressing what I think is the central challenge facing the country, and that is that people are working hard and they still can't get by. And candidates that have an answer to what needs to be done about that are doing very well. Those that don't or seem to be incrementalist in nature are not doing very well. And to me, that is really the common denominator.
Well, it's interesting to have this conversation in California because we've seen this insurgent left rise in swing states like Michigan and Wisconsin, of course, New York, which is a blue state, but in California, which I think for a lot of folks, both that live here and that look from the outside in, is such a bastion of progressivism. And yet, in this moment where there's this debate and this turn to the left among parts of the party, that hasn't really happened here. The bluest state in the country seems actually to be running kind of in the opposite direction of some of the country's most covered progressive breakthroughs. Do you think that Democratic voters here have been resistant to that for some reason, and why do you think that is?
I don't think that Californians have been resistant to that. I do think in all of these races that the quality of the candidate matters.
Yeah.
And some candidates are really able to inspire people and project an idea of change, and that may look very different. I think Mayor Lurie in San Francisco, Mayor Mahan in San Jose, both doing an excellent job. very different styles in other cities, but the quality of those candidates, the quality of the argument that they make for their agenda resonates. And I think you find others that are very charismatic, Mayor Mamdani, for example, who made a powerful case when he was running for mayor and is a hugely charismatic candidate. Doesn't hurt that he's young and good looking. So I'm working on both of those things.
Even President Trump agrees with you on that.
Well, the president and I agree on so much.
You've made that so clear, Senator. But let me ask you, I spoke with Speaker Mike Johnson for the conversation last week.
I'm sorry to hear that.
We were in Arizona, and I also followed him around on the campaign trail, and he is making the case to voters using characters like Mamdani, like El Sayed, to say that the Democratic Party has been taken over by Marxists. Do you think those kinds of politicians and candidates in the party do present a liability for the midterms?
I don't think that argument is going to work. First of all, it's a retread. They tried this argument several years ago. They had some success with it in places like Florida and South Texas by claiming that all Democrats are socialists.
But now you have Democrats that actually self-identify as democratic socialists and have, plenty of positions that they've held in the past, some of which they've walked away from now, but that Republicans are able to grab and weaponize.
I don't think it's going to be successful for a different reason, though, and that is they are now the status quo, and I don't mean the DSA candidates. Donald Trump, Mike Johnson represent an ugly status quo. A status quo in which people can't afford the price of gasoline, they can't afford the price of housing, they can't afford child care. We're involved in yet another foreign war that the president doesn't know what to do about. They are the status quo, and much as they try to change the topic and make a handful of Democrats the subject, I don't think it's going to work because people are asking themselves, is my life better? Did the president and Republicans keep their word? And the answer is no. The president promised he would keep us out of foreign wars. He promised he would address rising prices. And what has he done? In addition to getting us involved in this terrible war, he has told the country that the cost of living affordability is a hoax. He has literally told the country he thinks that housing is so unimportant. He's so offended that a reporter would ask him about inflation when he's got much more pressing business with the ballroom. He's building a golden ballroom while people are struggling to get by. I don't think you can change the topic from that. So I don't think Mike Johnson's going to be successful. They don't have anything else to offer. They certainly don't have any prescription for what to do about the economy. So they will do the best they can. But it is up to us to always bring it back to the economy.
Well, and you have your anti-Trump spiel on lock. I will give you that. But I do think Democrats have some hurdles. I want to ask you about these comments that Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez made when she was asked about some of the far-left rhetoric that dominated the party around 2019 and 2020. She kind of laughed it off and said that was, quote, woke 1.0 was crazy, she said. The debate is obviously a major tension within the party of how to sort of reckon with those years. What do you make of the woke one was crazy comments?
I'm not sure that I understand the context of it. I will say this about AOC, who I consider a friend. I think she's hugely talented. And every time I see the Republicans go after her, she ends up handing them their head on a platter. I think she speaks in a way that millions of young people understand and identify with. And we desperately need that in our party. There's a whole generation of Americans that look at the life their parents had and they think it's better than what they have. They wonder if they'll ever own a home. The year that I was born, the average new home buyer was 28 years old. Now it's 40. And I think that they can continue attacking her. I hope that they continue to think that's a good strategy. I think it's not a winning strategy. And I'm glad we have people in our party that are able to speak to a younger generation.
But why do you think that the Democratic brand has gotten to this place of toxicity where even in polls where the president's approval ratings are at record lows, Democrats are still even below that?
Well, I think there's sadly good reason for that. Because the failure to address some of the fundamental problems in the economy has been a bipartisan failing. It has been something, frankly, that has been in process for probably the last 30 to 35 years, as we have seen the productivity in the country continue to improve, the country generate enormous wealth. What we have seen for the first time in our history since the 1970s is that as productivity goes up, historically, wages and incomes went up with it. The people who made that prosperity possible also prospered, but beginning in the 70s, those lines started to diverge. They diverged under Democratic presidents and Congresses, and they did under Republican presidents and Congresses. Both parties have failed to do anything meaningful about it. So there's good reason, sadly, for the public to distrust both parties. And for my party, that means we're going to have to work to win that trust back. We're going to have to be proposing things that are bold. It is going to be completely inadequate to say, well, if you elect Democrats, we will take you back to the status quo before Donald Trump. If you elect Democrats, if our argument is, if you elect Democrats, we will restore ACA premium tax credits, and that's all we have to say, that is a losing message. And yes, we should do that, but we should also go well beyond that for things like Medicare for all. And I think we should take some note of what the Republicans have been able to do, and that is they have moved the country far and fast in a terrible direction.
But to that point, though,
but we can move the country far and fast in a good direction.
Do you think then maybe more mainstream establishment Democrats might also need to take more note of what these insurgent left candidates are doing and the energy and momentum that's behind them? I mean, when I watch, like, I remember what happened around Trump in 2015 and 2016 when a lot of Republicans said, no way, like, I'm keeping distance from this guy. There's no way this is going to go anywhere good. And then he dominated the party for the next decade, you know? Do you see some of that grassroots energy, and is that something that Democrats need to work to capitalize on?
We certainly need to capitalize and develop and cultivate energy among our grassroots. But I think the common denominator with Trump's victory and Mamdani's victory is the same, and that is both vigorously challenged a deeply unpopular status quo.
Yeah.
Trump promised to break everything, and he did. And that obviously is not the right answer, but nor is it the right answer to say we're just going to go back to the way it was. We have to do new things. I think we need a period like we saw with Franklin Roosevelt, where a Democratic administration and Congress is willing to experiment, to try new big things, to make the economy work for people again. We should be building vast quantities of housing to bring housing costs down. We did that after World War II for returning GIs. We did it affordably. There's no reason we can't do that again in this country. We need to think big. And I think whether you're a mainstream candidate or you're on the left, if you're thinking small and you're thinking incremental, it's just not going to cut it.
Well, it's interesting because California has sort of run the progressive experiment in the past. I'm talking during that sort of 2020 era where you had progressive DAs in places like LA and California, progressive mayors, and that experiment didn't go the way I think those folks are hoping for. There were recalls, there was a lot of frustration about increases in crime. I mean, what do you think that this slate of progressive candidates should take away from what California saw in the sort of backlash to a move to the far left?
I think all of us in the Democratic Party, wherever we are on the spectrum from left to right and center, need to keep first and foremost what most Americans really have on their minds, and that is they're working their ass off and they're still struggling to get by. They feel very little security in their retirement. They are afraid of getting sick because their health insurance isn't going to cut it. They are terrified I remember talking with a young woman in the north of the state who told me she got a good education because she was told she should. She got a lot of good debt along with it. And between her loan payments and her rent and her health insurance, she had nothing set aside and nothing to set aside, and she was petrified. And I think she was speaking for millions and millions of young people and people who are not so young. And it is not, in my view, the fault of changes in technology, and we are in the midst of another transformation. I think it is the fault of policymakers that we have not adapted to a workplace that is so different than the workplace my parents worked in, where so many people stayed with the same company their whole career and had health care and retirement through their work. And we're going to have to, with the advent of AI, think even more broadly now about how do we ensure that people have gainful employment and dignified employment and a secure retirement. What does that look like in the era of AI and globalization and automation? So this is, I think, going to be the cardinal challenge for both parties, and I'd like to see the Democratic Party leading the way.
Well, you talk about big new things. California has a billionaire tax on the ballot in November. It would impose a one-time 5% tax on the wealth of Californians worth more than $1 billion. Now, Governor Newsom and gubernatorial candidate Becerra don't support it, but the state party does. Do you support the tax?
I haven't gotten involved in that ballot measure, and I don't get involved in most ballot measures.
Well, to be fair, you are a California voter, so folks want to know how you might vote.
I am a California voter, but I am a U.S. senator, and I'm more focused, frankly, on the federal legislation to try to create a more progressive tax.
So you won't say how you'll vote?
I haven't decided, frankly, how I'm going to vote. And what I am focused on, though, is in addition to supporting any number of proposals to make sure that people can't simply borrow against their assets and avoid paying taxes, or pay, those that are multi-billionaires pay a lower tax rate than all the people who work for them. I am trying to put together a comprehensive and progressive tax reform package that I would like to see if I can somehow inject into the presidential debate that addresses this phenomenal concentration of wealth now.
But there are a lot of Democrats that would like to see something like this billionaire tax at the federal level. And I wonder how you'd respond to voters that hear you kind of hedging there and say, well, the establishment Democrats are still more worried about protecting the wealthy than taking bold action. Isn't this, when you talk about big new things, is this just not the direction you think that those big new things should go?
I support a wealth tax at the federal level. And I support taxing capital gains different than we tax capital gains. I'm
just surprised it's a hard answer for you on this one. On the ballot measure here.
It has pros and cons. I mean, I don't think it's an easy answer when it comes to each state developing a one-time only tax. And what is the impact on business in the state? What's the impact on people who need healthcare services that are going to be cut otherwise? It's not an easy question. Mm-hmm. And frankly, I've got enough difficult questions at the federal level. But one thing that is not difficult for me, and that is there should be a wealth tax at the federal level. There should be a much more progressive tax code than the one we have. And one thing that has become so abundantly clear is this concentration of wealth we see now is operating to perpetuate itself. And you have individuals now that have such a massive say in our electoral process that they can pour hundreds of millions of dollars into a single campaign if they choose to. We have a broken campaign finance system that allows them to do that. And I think if we don't bring determination to solving that problem also, this income inequality, wealth inequality gap is just going to get worse. And it is, I also think, deeply destabilizing. The combination of the disruption of the workforce through AI, the vast concentration and the arrogant use of wealth by some who have amassed it, is going to be hugely disruptive for society. It's bad economics. I think it's immoral. And I'm working on federal solutions to try to address that.
I do want to ask about another debate playing out within the Democratic Party, and we've seen a lot of shifts on this, is about Israel and the U.S. relationship with that country. You've sharpened your criticism of Netanyahu considerably since 2024, but you did still vote against blocking offensive arms sales to Israel. What has changed in your views on Israel and what hasn't?
Actually, I voted for the joint resolutions of disapproval the last time they came up.
Okay.
And it's and those joint resolutions of disapproval prevented the sale, or would have prevented the sale if they were successful, of 1,000-pound bombs as well as giant bulldozers.
So you're in support of no more arms sales to Israel?
Well, I voted against those sales, and I'm going to take each request individually. I support things like the Iron Dome system that are necessary, I think, for Israel's defense. But I am in vehement disagreement with how Netanyahu has run that country, with the conduct of the war in Gaza, with the conduct of the war in Iran and in Lebanon. And I think we have to use the leverage that we have, not only to make sure that we're in the first and foremost doing things that are in the U.S. national interest, but also in the interest of a peaceful resolution of the conflict there. And I start from, one ironclad conviction, and that is the only way this gets solved is by having two states side by side living in peace and security. And so what I ask myself when I'm making these decisions is, does this help get us there, or is this an impediment? And so much of what this government is doing and saying is an impediment to getting to two states that I can't support those policies. And so I will make these decisions as they come, but it is heartbreaking to see how Netanyahu has so damaged Israel, its standing in the world, and the loss of life as a result.
One of the challenges within this debate is there is also a large concern around anti-Semitism. Do you believe that there's an anti-Semitism problem on the left?
Well, I think there is an anti-Semitism problem across the board. And yes, some of it is on the left, and some of it is very plainly on the right, and some of it is probably in the middle. I called the rabbi at a synagogue recently to express my alarm and upset over the fact that someone had painted swastikas on the synagogue. And the rabbi said, "Do you realize, Senator, this is the second time you've called me for this reason?" And he was right. I make those calls so often, I'd forgotten that I had called him once before for the same reason. And I'm in a chat with a number of Jewish members. We share what's happening in our states and our districts, and not a day, not a week goes by where we don't see some new horror. I've never seen anything like it in scale and scope, and it's awful, and we need to be able to talk about it. You can agree or disagree with what the Israeli government is doing, and that is a separate conversation. But we have a serious anti-Semitism problem in this country and around the world that cannot be ignored. So I obviously feel strongly about that because I experience it myself.
Yeah. One of the other parts of this debate is the role of AIPAC in campaign spending. I know you have in the past accepted money from AIPAC and pro-Israel lobby support throughout your career. Will you continue to do so?
It will depend. First and foremost, I make my decisions based on what I think is right for the region, but mostly for the country, our country. At times, that has been very different than AIPAC's view. I was a strong supporter of the JCPOA. I disagreed with AIPAC on these recent arms sales. At other times, we're in agreement, as we were right after October 7th, when Hamas raped, murdered, and butchered over 1,000 Israelis, mostly civilians. So I'm going to continue to make the decisions I make and allow individuals and organizations to decide what to do with that, whether they want to support me or don't want to support me. But these issues are just too important to come at it backwards and say, okay, what do I do to gain the support of this or that organization? I'm going to make the decision I think is right, and people can support me. I've been fortunate in the past to have support from the Jewish community, the Muslim community, the Christian community, and I'm just going to continue to try to make the best call.
But you won't say that you don't want to take AIPAC money?
I'm not going to exclude any person, faith, organization. I'm going to make the decisions that I think are best and let the chips fall where they may.
Yeah, and I ask because, there are Democrats that have taken very different positions on this. I sat down with Ruben Gallego, your fellow senator, a while back, and he was very unequivocal about this issue. It's going to be a continuing debate within your party. But I don't want to let you go without asking about 2028, which is just around the corner, don't you think, Senator?
I don't know. I'm still very focused on 2026. We have a super important midterm coming up.
Midterm. No, midterms are very important. But it is funny because California, you've got Gavin Newsom, you've got Kamala Harris from here, you have Ro Khanna. I mean, it is a state that has been producing a number of potential candidates. I know you're not going to come out here and endorse anyone right now, but when you think about the mold for 28, what do you think that candidate will need to bring, will need to do? Do they look more like a Mamdani? Do they look more like a Javier Becerra? And by look, I mean in the style of politics and campaigning?
What I am really hoping for, what I'm really counting on, because this is such an existential moment for our country, for our democracy, is to see what happened when Barack Obama burst on the scene. We didn't know that Barack Obama was going to be Barack Obama until he became Barack Obama. I would say we didn't know that Bill Clinton was going to be Bill Clinton until he emerged. I don't know who that person is going to be, but we desperately need someone who catches the interest, excitement, enthusiasm, and hope of the Democratic Party. That's what I'm going to be looking for. Who can capture that kind of moment, who rises to the occasion. And even if I thought I knew who that was today, and I don't know who that is today, it may be a very different person 6 months or a year from now. So I'm going to be looking, who is that person? And I do think Democratic voters, much as they can be maligned, are very pragmatic. They want someone who can win. And they know the stakes now more than anything. And even though you didn't invite me to talk about the midterms, I do want to say this.
Well, I was just going to ask, do Democrats take the Senate?
I think we have multiple pathways now to take the Senate. And this was unthinkable a year ago, but we are tighter ahead in Alaska, Ohio, North Carolina, Iowa, Maine, Texas. We are narrowly down in Florida, in Mississippi even, and other states that are emerging. This is, I think, shaping up to be one of those wave elections in which you wake up the day after Election Day and you're like, did you see some guy named John Tester won in Montana? Who is John Tester? There are going to be, I think, a lot of moments like that the day after the election when Americans wake up and they find out there are a lot more Democrats in the Senate than we were expecting. And since you've been asking about the Middle East, let me just say, inshallah.
I think that's a great way to end it. Thank you so much, Senator Adam Schiff. We appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.